Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Our lead story tonight comes from China. Another minister has gone missing. The defense minister of the country. The US says he's been sacked, he's under house arrest and faces an investigation. Is this a purge? Beijing hasn't spoken yet, but this is a worrying trend. Businessmen, sports stars, film stars, foreign minister, defense minister, the vanishing act is becoming a highlight of Xi Jinping's presidency, and the world has reason to be concerned. Meanwhile, Erdogan is turning to China for Turkey's latest nuclear plant. In Pakistan, as the people suffer, the military is building more nukes. A new report reveals Pakistan's nuclear strategy and where and how they keep their warheads. Did Elon Musk interfere in the war in Ukraine? Did he sabotage a planned attack? The US Senate wants to investigate. How old is too old to run for president? We ask because America will most likely have to choose between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. In Italy, 7,000 immigrants land on an island in one day. That's more than the island's own population. And it's Engineers' Day in India. We'd like to discuss the headlines first. Tensions continue to soar between the US and China. Beijing sanctions 2 American defense companies over arms sales to Taiwan. In August, the US for the first time approved direct military aid to Taipei. China has sanctioned American firms over selling weapons to Taiwan in the past as well. Iran wants the European Union, calling their sanctions illegal. The UK, France and Germany said the sanctions will continue. These are on those involved in Iran's nuclear program. The sanctions were to be lifted in October as per the nuclear deal signed 8 years back, but the deal is now stuck in a limbo, and so the sanctions remain. The Pakistan-Afghanistan border crossing reopens after more than a week. The Torkham crossing was closed after border guards opened fire. The construction of an Afghan outpost led to this gun battle. Torkham is the busiest crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan. US President Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden is indicted on gun charges. The 53-year-old is charged with illegally buying a gun in 2018 when he was using drugs. This casts a shadow on his father, Joe Biden's re-election campaign. It's the first time in American history that a sitting president's child has been prosecuted. Apple will update iPhone 12 in France. The move comes after regulators raised radiation fears. On Tuesday, France ordered a halt on the sales of the iPhone 12, which was released in 2020. And it's not bye for all you NSYNC fans. The American boy band reunites for their first new song in over 20 years. The song will feature in the upcoming movie Trolls Band Together. We begin with what's being called the mystery in Beijing. The plot is thickening. If Xi Jinping is the master magician, then China's defense minister is his latest trick. His name is Li Shangfu, and he is still missing. The latest reports say he has been sacked, but they don't answer some very basic questions like why. Also, where has he gone? But then again, we've seen this same script before. Same script, different protagonist. In the month of June, in fact, it was China's foreign minister. His name was Qin Gang. He too went missing. And then he was sacked. He's still missing. And now Defense Minister Li Shangfu is missing. Has he too been sacked? Well, we don't know for sure, and Beijing will not say. Listen to their response.
Where is China's Defense Minister Li Shangfu? Is he under investigation?
I'm not aware of the situation you mentioned.
This is remarkable. 2 top ministers of China go missing, and Beijing's official spokesperson is clueless. She says, I'm not aware of the situation. Like always, there is an information vacuum, and this is fueling a lot of speculation. Defense Minister Li Shangfu has not been seen for over 2 weeks now. When was his last public appearance? In late August. He gave a speech at a China-Africa Security Conference, and since then he has not been seen. Neither has Beijing spoken about it. So China watchers are now retracing Li's steps. That's how they're trying to join the dots. Li Shangfu had a packed schedule. In recent weeks, he had meetings lined up. Last week, he was supposed to be in Vietnam. What for? A defense cooperation meeting. China and Vietnam were supposed to discuss their border. Li had to meet the defense leaders of Vietnam. This was supposed to be a 2-day engagement. The dates were 7th and 8th September. But just before the event, Li pulled out. Beijing told Hanoi, the defense minister will not be able to come. Reason? Health condition. This is according to 2 Vietnamese officials. Does this ring a bell? It's like a story that's running on loop. When Qing Gang disappeared, China gave the same excuse. They said the minister is not keeping well. The story was hard to swallow then, and this one is equally tough to digest. In recent days, Defense Minister Li has missed more engagements. The Navy Chief of Singapore was in China. His name is Rear Admiral Shane Watt. He visited Beijing for 5 days, from 4th to 9th September. And the Defense Minister, Li Shangfu, was supposed to meet him too. But he did not show up. Even Singapore was taken by surprise. They haven't issued an official statement, but some reports have come out. They quote officials off the record. The Rear Admiral wanted to meet Defense Minister Li. The meeting was part of their official schedule, but it did not happen. We are not sure if China gave a reason for the no-show. And the record does not inspire confidence. Beijing has a history of being evasive, especially about such disappearances. So don't expect them to make a statement on Li's whereabouts. The information is flowing from other sources, like the United States of America. They seem to have insider info, and they say the Chinese defense minister could be under house arrest. I'll repeat that. The Chinese defense minister could be under house arrest. This has come from a top US diplomat. His name is Rahm Emanuel. He's the US ambassador to Japan, and he's been very vocal on this issue. In fact, it was this ambassador, he was the first person to shine light on Li's disappearance. He posted about it on social media a few days back, and now he says the minister is under house arrest. Notice the language he uses, quite unusual for a diplomat. But such are the times we live in. The US government has made an assessment. They have reason to believe that Li Shangfu is under investigation and that he's been sacked. So Li is no longer China's defense minister. That's what America says. China has not confirmed or denied this. What is Li being investigated for? Most likely a procurement scam. You see, before becoming the defense minister, Li Shangfu managed the PLA's procurement unit, the Chinese Army's procurement unit. And recently there were reports of corruption related to this unit. China has begun an investigation. So has the defense minister been purged? We may never get an official answer. Remember, the foreign minister has been gone for 3 months. He has not resurfaced, and Beijing has not bothered to explain what happened. That's how Xi Jinping operates. He skipped the G20 summit, no reasons given. His top ministers are missing, no explanation. This is both baffling and worrying. This unpredictability and lack of accountability poses a threat to the world. Imagine this from the perspective of a country like India. We share a 3,000-kilometer long border with China. There's a standoff, 3 years and counting. Last month, there was an agreement to de-escalate. Now the defense minister is MIA, missing in action. Where does that leave the border talks? Who should New Delhi engage with? At this rate, can you count on any minister in China or on any decision that they agree to? These are questions I'm sure the whole world is asking. What do you make of a country where the top businessmen go missing, where film stars and sports icons disappear, where top ministers vanish without a trace? It's unstable and dangerous, especially when it's the second largest economy in the world. Missing ministers or not, China's strategic ambition keeps growing. The next target is Turkey. Talks are underway for a new nuclear power plant. Ankara says the deal could happen soon. Chinese officials inspected possible locations. They're keen on this part, Eastern Thrace, which borders Greece and Bulgaria. If things go to plan, the deal could be signed within months, which means China could build a nuclear plant in Turkey. Now, this raises questions. What does Turkey's nuclear landscape look like? Why China? And what are the wider strategic implications of this? Let's go one by one. Turkey has 2 nuclear power plants. The first is under construction. It is being built by Russia. Reports say it will be operational by next year. The second is still being planned. It's down to Russia and South Korea. Either of them could build the second power plant. So the Chinese one will be the third. But why does Turkey need so many? Because they are spending too much on importing energy. Look at these numbers. Turkey's overall import bill is $364 billion, 364 billion. Out of this, 80 billion is energy. That's around 22%. So Ankara wants to reduce this dependence. They want to replace imported energy with domestic nuclear power. Plus, nuclear energy is considered green. And Turkey wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. For that, you need more nuclear power plants. In fact, 3 may not be enough. Ankara wants to produce 20 gigawatts from nuclear plants. That's 4 times the capacity of one plant. So the country needs a boost. Along with the big reactors, they may also need SMRs, small modular reactors, SMR. Last year, they reached out to Washington for these SMRs. Talks were on to buy around 35 of them, but that was in December 2022. Since then, there has been no update. Did the Americans back out? Is that why Turkey is reaching out to China? Well, maybe, but China's nuclear dominance is not new. It has been decades in the making. In the last century, the US was considered the gold standard. They had the best reactors. But recently, Washington has lost out. China is currently building 21 nuclear reactors. That's 2.5 times more than any other country. So the lead is massive. It also helps that China's nuclear power companies are state-run. They have government patronage. They get all the subsidies. So they have the edge. Which brings us to the final question. What are the strategic implications here? Well, nuclear cooperation is not like any other. It's unlike any other. It's not like building a factory abroad. Nuclear plants are strategic assets. You can't just build and leave. Take Russia, for example. They are also using nuclear power to exert influence. Moscow has 34 reactors operating in 11 countries. Some of them are US allies. In fact, Turkey is the best example. Like we said, their first nuclear plant is being built by Russia. It's called the Build, Own, Operate model. Build, Own, Operate. Moscow will send thousands of engineers to operate this plant. Only 30% of the workers will be local. Do you see the implications here? Russia will have a permanent strategic presence in Turkey, and looks like China wants the same. But what does it say about the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan? It shows that he's confident about China and Russia, that he trusts them. Just think about it. Would you trust your rivals with strategic nuclear assets? With more than 10% of your total electricity, chances are you won't. You would rather have your allies handle them. Which is why Turkey's decision is so important and worth noting. We are talking about a NATO member here. Instead of going to the West, Erdogan is going to Russia and China for nuclear power. It's a sign of the growing divide. Last week, the West announced a new economic corridor with India. Erdogan opposed it. But the same Erdogan joined China's Belt and Road project. Last month, there was talk of Turkey also joining CPEC, that's the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Pakistan's then Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif invited Erdogan to join it. So the trajectory is quite clear. Erdogan is linking his fortunes to Russia and China. He can do that without fearing the US. After all, Ankara is still Washington's treaty ally, NATO member. We saw that leverage earlier this year. Finland and Sweden were looking to join the NATO. Erdogan agreed, but with conditions. Finland has joined the alliance. Sweden is still being held up. Reports say Erdogan wants F-16 fighter jets from the US, then he will accept. So my point is, Erdogan finds himself in a diplomatic sweet spot. He can build reactors with China. He can buy fighter jets from the US, he can sell drones to Ukraine and purchase military systems from Russia, all without consequences. It's a fine line that the Turkish president is trying to walk. Speaking of nuclear power, Pakistan is expanding its nuclear arsenal. Even as the citizens struggle for basic necessities, Islamabad, or should I say Rawalpindi, is chasing a bigger nuclear stockpile. A new report is out, and it is revealing. It looks into Pakistan's nuclear program and how it is being steadily ramped up. More warheads are being added. The military is getting more delivery systems, also new launch facilities. Tonight, we'll bring you all the details. How many nuclear warheads does Pakistan have? At least 170, 170. The highest number ever. In 2018, Pakistan had 150 warheads. In 2020, they added 10. And in 3 years, they've added another 10. So you could say Pakistan's arsenal is growing at a faster pace. In the past 4 years, they've added some 20 warheads. This expansion should worry neighbors like India. It has certainly taken experts by surprise. You see, in 1999, the US had made a projection. They said that by the year 2020, Pakistan would have 60 to 80 warheads. 60 to 80 by 2020. Look at the current number, 170. That's more than twice the estimate. And it won't end here. Pakistan's stockpile could grow further. That's what a new projection says. That they're aiming for 200 warheads. And they could get there by the end of this decade. If Pakistan keeps producing at the current pace, they will have 200 warheads by the end of this decade. And Rawalpindi is trying to make sure that happens. It is building more infrastructure. There are facilities that can enrich uranium. What is the current production rate? Experts believe Pakistan can build 14 to 27 warheads every year. How is that even possible? To answer that, we must first tell you about fissile material. It's like lighting a matchstick. When you strike on a rough surface, a matchstick lights up. Now imagine there are other matchsticks lined up close. One flame will end up igniting all of them. And that's what fissile material does in a nuclear bomb. When a nuclear weapon is fired, the fissile material starts a reaction. It releases massive amounts of energy, and this finally leads to an explosion. Usually, two kinds of materials are used for this: plutonium-239 and uranium-235. Uranium-235. They make the nuclear bomb. And they make the bomb work. They fuel the bomb. Reports say Pakistan is now making enough of these materials, and that is how they can accelerate warhead production. But having a warhead is not enough. You need somewhere to fire it from, and Pakistan is making strides in that department too. We have a breakup for you. First, let's talk about the land-based systems. Pakistan has at least 6 of them. It plans to add at least 2 more. They're believed to be in development. Next, we have the garrisons. This is where they're believed to be keeping their nukes in garrisons. And how many garrisons does Pakistan have? At least 5. We have the names: Akro, Gujranwala, Khuzdar, Pano Akil and Sargoda. These are the names of the garrisons. 2 of them are in northern Pakistan, 3 are in the south. What about air power? Pakistan has 4 air bases. This is where they keep their nuclear capable aircraft: Minhas or Kamra, Rafiki, Shehbaz and Masroor. These are the names of their air bases. 2 are in the north and 2 are in the south. And what kind of planes can fire nukes? 2 aircraft in Pakistan's arsenal can do the job: the Mirage 3 and the Mirage 5. How many squadrons? At least 5. Pakistan has given them special names: Bandits, Haidars, Ghazis, Cobras and Zarras. Needless to say, all of these bases and garrisons are close to the Indian border for obvious reasons. It also shows that Pakistan has a pretty exhaustive plan to ramp up its nukes. And this should worry the world, not just India, the rest of the world too. Last year, US President Joe Biden spoke about this. He said, and I quote, "I think Pakistan is maybe one of the most dangerous nations in the world. Nuclear weapons without any cohesion." That's what he said about Pakistan. Now, Islamabad had called this claim baseless. But soon after that, the entire nation plunged into economic turmoil. The suffering has been immense, but only for the people, not for the Pakistani military. Their assets and budgets keep growing, and now Pakistan's nuclear reserves are on the rise. So here's what we'd like to ask. Is the IMF watching this? How is a country that survives on bailouts being allowed to build these dangerous weapons? And how is the world okay with this? Pakistan and nukes, basically a rogue actor with too much power. A lot like Elon Musk, you could say. He's the richest person in the world. He also has an opinion on everything, on business, on culture, on technology, and lately on geopolitics. Now, having an opinion is fine. It's a free world. You can think what you want to. But Elon Musk's opinions are shaping wars and conflicts. And that is too much power for one individual, one private, unelected individual. Some lawmakers in the US have noticed this. A Senate committee has decided to probe Elon Musk's company SpaceX, specifically one decision. In September last year, Ukraine was plotting a drone attack on Crimea, a drone strike. They wanted to sink Russian warships. And to control the drones, they needed internet. Just one problem though, Russia had knocked out Ukraine's connectivity. So Kiev asked SpaceX to help. The company has Starlink satellites over Crimea. If those were activated, Ukraine would get internet and the drones could be fired. But as it turned out, Elon Musk refused. He was scared of a Russian nuclear response. And no one knew of this. No one knew any of this. It was revealed only recently. In a new Elon Musk biography. You can see why it's a problem. How can one man decide the fate of a major military operation, and that to a businessman? US lawmakers are expected to ask this question. They want to understand the national security implications of what Musk did, also why he did it. After all, Elon Musk is a US citizen. He recently said he will fight and die for the US. Then why did he not turn on the satellite? This was Elon Musk's response. Listen to this.
The region around Crimea was actually turned off. Now, the reason it was turned off was actually originally was because the United States had sanctions against Russia, and we were not allowed to actually, and that includes Crimea in the sanctions. If I had received a presidential directive to turn it on, I would have done so because I do regard the president as the chief executive officer of the country, whether I...
Two things to note here. One, he says Starlink was not activated because of US sanctions. It wasn't his personal decision. And two, if Joe Biden had asked him to activate Starlink, he would have done so. I guess it's easy to say now, just shift the blame to Washington. But either way, questions need to be asked because it's not just Ukraine. Elon Musk is wading into the biggest conflicts of our times, even Taiwan. He says Taiwan is to China what Hawaii is to the US. You have to listen to this.
From this standpoint, maybe it's analogous to like Hawaii or something like that, like an integral part of China that is arbitrarily not part of China, mostly because of the U.S. has stopped, the U.S. Pacific Fleet has stopped any sort of reunification effort force.
Both are islands, yes. But beyond that, there is no comparison. Hawaii became a US state after a referendum. Around 93% voters said yes, they wanted to be a US state. And that is not the case in Taiwan. Around 90% of Taiwan's population opposes reunification with China. They like democracy. So comparing Taiwan and Hawaii is inaccurate. The statement has triggered a sharp response from Taiwan. This is what their foreign ministry is saying, and I'm quoting, "Hope Elon Musk can also ask China to open Twitter to its people. Perhaps he thinks banning it is a good policy. Like turning off Starlink to thwart Ukraine's counter-strike. Listen up, Taiwan is not part of the PRC and certainly not for sale." All we can say is, ouch. But then again, what did Elon Musk expect? He's made a habit of this. Last year, he made a similar suggestion. He asked Taipei to give China some control over Taiwan, basically give the bully what they want. Do you see the problem here? Taiwan and Ukraine are the biggest flashpoints of our times. Elon Musk can influence both. He can sabotage Ukraine's counteroffensive. He can also hijack Taiwan's public opinion. Because remember, Musk does not just own SpaceX, he also owns Twitter, which he now calls X. And that's too much power for one individual. So what is the solution? Well, the Senate investigation is a good start. It will answer some important questions. For example, what is the contract between SpaceX and the Pentagon? Was the contract active during Ukraine's foiled attack? Why didn't US officials play a more active role? These questions could set a precedent for the future, not just for Elon Musk, but for all these big companies. Google faced similar accusations in 2018. They had signed a deal with the Pentagon. Under this deal, Google's artificial intelligence was used to analyze drone footage, presumably to match targets. Facebook's role in Myanmar is another example. Hateful content and fake news was spread about the Rohingya community. Facebook knew, but did nothing. We all know what happened next. An entire community was forced into an exodus. Should companies have this kind of power? In an ideal world, no. But the likes of Google and Twitter are facts of life. You can't wish them away. What you can do is curb them, limit how they can use their influence in such situations, like war or communal riots. If not, we could be sliding down a slippery slope. And straight ahead is corporate autocracy. Now let's move from Musk to the war he supposedly sabotaged. Ukraine's counteroffensive is still going slow. It hasn't made any significant territorial gains. Now it seems they're shifting focus. Kiev is training its guns on Crimea. This Wednesday, Ukraine hit Crimea with an early morning attack. The target was Sevastopol. It has a strategic shipyard, which is home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine attacked it with 10 cruise missiles and 3 uncrewed speedboats. Last night, Zelensky hailed the destruction of a Russian air defense system in Crimea. On Monday, Ukraine said it had captured an oil rig near Crimea. So the trajectory is clear. Ukraine is targeting Crimea, the region that Russia captured in 2014. And how is Moscow responding? Looks like Vladimir Putin is turning to his friends. He courted North Korea's Kim Jong-un this week, and now he's met Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Here's a report.
On Wednesday, cruise missiles rained down on Sevastopol. It's the largest settlement in the Crimean Peninsula, and it contains a crucial Russian naval base. The shipyard in Sevastopol is the home base for Russia's Black Sea Fleet. It's also where the fleet undergoes repairs, so it's essential for Russia's naval dominance in the Black Sea. Ukraine, of course, knows this, which is why it launched an early morning attack on Wednesday. Russia says 10 cruise missiles and 3 uncrewed boats attacked Sevastopol. In the morning, smoke was seen billowing out of the shipyard.
We were woken by a loud noise. My child was woken up as well. It was about 3 a.m. We got very scared. Everything was shaking. That's basically how it was.
Satellite imagery showed damage to some vessels under repair. The company that released the images said a landing ship and a submarine were damaged. Russia's defense ministry confirmed that 2 vessels were hit. But it said that both ships would be fully repaired and return to service. This wasn't the only attack on Crimea this week.
One more thing. A special mention should be made to the entire personnel of the Security Service of Ukraine as well as our naval forces. I thank you for today's triumph. The invaders' air defense system on the Crimean land was destroyed. Very significant, well done. Glory to all who fight for Ukraine, and thanks to everyone who helps.
That was Zelensky's address on Thursday night. Ukraine struck Russian air defense systems in the west of Crimea. Russia didn't confirm the destruction, but it said it shot down 11 drones overnight. And these aren't the only recent incidents of Ukrainian operations around Crimea. On Monday, Kyiv released this footage. It shows Ukrainian troops capturing an oil rig. Russia had taken the platform from Ukraine back in 2015, a year after the annexation of Crimea. Ukraine says the platform was being used for military purposes.
During inspection, we found unguided airborne missiles in the engine room. We understood that the enemy used the platform as a warehouse for ammunition. We also found cisterns with petrol. This platform was very important for the enemy. That's where they refueled and kept ammunition.
These attacks in and around Crimea come as Ukraine fails to make much headway over land. The counteroffensive that began earlier this year hasn't seen many successes. Some of Ukraine's backers have been getting impatient. The attacks on Crimea could be a way for Ukraine to show progress. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been meeting his friends. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has been in Russia since Tuesday. They met on Wednesday. Putin was asked if any deal was discussed that breached international sanctions on North Korea.
This, I want to emphasize again, is complete nonsense. North Korea is our neighbor and we must, one way or another, build good neighborly relations with our neighbors.
Kim is still in the country, visiting an aviation plant in Russia's Far East. Putin, on the other hand, is meeting Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. During the meeting, Lukashenko suggested a triple alliance between Minsk, Moscow and Pyongyang. How serious that suggestion was remains to be seen. But it's certain that Putin intends to keep Russia's old friends close.
War, unstable nuclear states, big tech monopoly and climate change are some of the biggest challenges facing humanity. But how do we tackle them? Alone, there isn't much we can do, which is why we need vibrant and dedicated leaders, people who are up to the task, people with a spring in their step. Unfortunately, that's missing in most countries, especially in the United States of America. President Joe Biden will turn 81 in November. This November, he turns 81. Let's assume he gets re-elected next year. He would be 86 years old by the end of his second term. 86 years old. If it's not Biden, it could be Donald Trump. And Trump is 77 years old right now. He would be 82 by the end of his second term. That's peak retirement age. Actually, scratch that. That's 20 years after peak retirement age. Should leaders this old be contesting? And that too for the country's top office. US Senator Mitt Romney says no. Romney himself is 76 years old. He doesn't plan to run for re-election. Why is that? Because of age. Romney would be in his mid-80s by the end of another term. So instead of running, he's retiring. And he's asking Trump and Biden to do the same. Listen to this.
I think it would be a great thing if both President Biden and former President Trump were to stand aside and let their respective party pick someone in the next generation. President Biden, when he was running, said he was a transitional figure to the next generation. Well, time to transition.
Biden did say that. In 2020, he called himself a transitional president. But clearly, there is none happening. No transition. Biden wants to stay in the White House. Donald Trump wants to return. But should either of them be on the ballot? I know these are uncomfortable questions. You don't want to discriminate based on age. But how old is too old? The average life expectancy in the US is 77 years. Both Biden and Trump are over that. So what is their excuse to keep running? I can guess what Trump would say. There are 12 candidates running for the Republican nomination. Trump is by far the favorite. Around 60% of Republican voters support Trump. They know he's old. They know he will be 82 by 2029, yet they support him. So the voters too must take some of the blame. Biden's case is different. As president, he does not face any real challenge. There are 3 candidates, including Biden. One of them is Robert Kennedy Jr. He recently took a shot at Biden's age. He said people should vote for a president who can complete their term. In other words, Kennedy does not think Biden will. And the president has not helped his case. Last week, he attended the Medal of Honor ceremony. In the middle of it, he walked out. No explanation, no statement. Just look at what happened. This is a problem across US politics. Senator Mitch McConnell had 2 worrying episodes. He froze in the middle of a press conference. He said nothing. He simply stared into the blank space.
Partisan cooperation and a string of
McConnell is the top Republican in the US Senate. Biden is the president. And Trump wants to be president. Why is it that all these leaders are old, not to mention white and men? We can think of a number of explanations. Maybe youngsters are simply not interested in politics, or maybe it's too tough to break out. You need millions of dollars to run a Senate campaign, even more for president. You cannot do that without corporate interests. And who would they support? Who would the corporate support? A young dynamic politician or an aging leader who loves the status quo? There you have it. Only 5% of world leaders are over 80 years of age. 35% are in their 60s and 22% are in their 50s. What about India? The Lok Sabha's average age is 53. The global average for lawmakers is 54, so not too bad with India. The Indian cabinet, though, is a bit older. It was around 58 years in 2021, the average age. But these are acceptable numbers. In the US, they're much higher. The average age in the US Senate is 64 years. That's a decade older than the global average. The question is, how do you correct this? How old should be considered too old? And it's a tough question to answer. Every person is different. Maybe you're still active and sharp at 75, or maybe your neighbor is not. So setting an arbitrary age limit could be problematic. Having said that, we already do it. In the US, you must be 35 years old to run for president. Here in India, you must be 25 to contest for the Lok Sabha. So by extension, you must be 25 years old to be the Prime Minister of India. So if lower age limits are fine, why not upper limits? My point is, we need to face the uncomfortable truth. Wanting young politicians is not ageism. It is simply rational thought. I'm sure some politicians remain sharp into their 70s and 80s, but we cannot look at exceptions. We need to look at the norm. Think of it as a two-step plan. First, remove the filter of ageism. Look at it from the point of national interest. Who is fit to lead? And secondly, have a conversation. Some people will say 70 should be the upper limit. Others will say 50 or 60. The point of democracy is to find the middle ground. Now let's turn our attention to Italy. A tiny Italian island in the Mediterranean Sea is in turmoil. It's called the island of Lampedusa. It is an island of about 6,000 residents. This week, its population more than doubled. In fact, it happened in a day. About 7,000 asylum seekers landed on the island. Let me repeat, this is more than their entire population. These immigrants have been arriving from Africa on dilapidated boats. Now, Lampedusa has always been one of the first stops for migrants, but it's not equipped to handle these numbers. Its migrant reception center can house 400 people. And you know how many landed? 7,000. The government of Italy swung into action. Some of these people were sent to Sicily, but this is a temporary solution. Migrant crossings are already double of what they were at this time last year. And the recent crises in Africa, from the coups to the natural disasters, are bound to increase migration further. Here's our report.
Starting on early Tuesday morning, a wave of migrants began landing in Italy. They arrived by the thousands, in hundreds of ramshackle boats. They took off from northern Africa and disembarked on the tiny island of Lampedusa. Within 24 hours, about 7,000 migrants landed on the island, an island of about 6,000 permanent residents. Obviously, it wasn't equipped to deal with such numbers. Their migrant reception center is operated by the Italian Red Cross. It was built to accommodate 400 people.
The situation is complicated, and as the Italian Red Cross, we are trying to continue to guarantee with great effort basic services to the people we are assisting.
Some migrants tried to leave the reception center after a fight reportedly broke out. Some locals on the island helped the migrants with food. But many are worried about the migrant surge.
We, the people of Lampedusa, ask that this island be kept out of the situation. We no longer have the possibility of bearing this burden from a psychological and humanitarian point of view.
Most of the migrants are from Africa. Many are trying to escape poverty, political persecution, and terrorism. They make the deadly journey across the Mediterranean on flimsy boats, risking it all for a chance at a better life. This year, almost 126,000 migrants arrived in Italy. That's about double the amount of people who had come by this time last year. And this is despite Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's anti-immigration policies. Meloni and her right-wing government came to power last year, promising to curb migration. She believes that a higher European birth rate is needed. That migration is not the solution to Europe's demographic crisis. She repeated this yesterday, even as the migrants were arriving in Lampedusa.
I think that a quota of legal migration where this is necessary, it is and can be fully integrated, can make a positive contribution to our economies, but I remain convinced that it would be more responsible for us to entrust European citizens with the solution to the European welfare system crisis.
Her government has restricted the activities of charity rescue boats, impounded their vessels, and banned them from conducting multiple rescues. But still, the number of migrants doubled this year. Today, the pressure on Lampedusa has reduced slightly. Many of the migrants were taken to Sicily. Thousands queued up for the ferries that took them further into Europe. There are also NGOs that are working to get the migrants to mainland Italy.
And then they go toward the northern border. That is Ventimiglia in Ulx with France, and it's Chiasso for Switzerland, and it's a Brenner Pass to go towards Austria and Germany.
But it seems the other European nations are planning to close their borders. Germany's Interior Ministry has criticized Italy for not taking in its fair share of migrants. Meanwhile, France has said it would increase the soldiers on its border with Italy. All this as more instability hits Africa. The earthquake in Morocco, floods in Libya, coups in Niger and Gabon, and terrorism in the Sahel. This will only lead to more migration from Africa to Europe. Will closing the borders be enough?
$1.5 million. That's how many Indians became engineers or become engineers every year, 1.5 million. And today is their day. Every year, on 15 September, India celebrates Engineers Day. It is observed on the birth anniversary of M. Vishveshwaraya, a pioneering Indian engineer. He was born in the year 1861. And even today, he's called the builder of India. He once said, "We require science, technology, and innovation to transform our country." And he was right. Our engineers have done just that. They've transformed India. They've helped make it the world's 5th largest economy. After all, engineering is central to ensuring economic growth, be it a health or a population issue, or even a problem of food, water, or energy security. Engineers play a major role in tackling challenges. They shape every facet of our lives, from the work we do to the homes we live in and the food we eat. That's because engineering is a field that is wonderfully diverse. It can be a rewarding career choice. And India knows this very well. Its love affair with engineering is as well known as its engineers, like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the missile man of India, Indian rocket scientist Satish Dhawan, A. Lalita, India's first woman electrical engineer, or Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. Honestly, the list seems endless. India's engineering system is a success story, and good education has been its lifeline. For many, engineering colleges in India are a gateway to success. India has about 6,000 of them. Engineering colleges, 6,000, and the most glamorous of them are the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology. They're highly coveted. I'll explain why. India has 108 unicorn startups. This is just one example. 108 unicorn startups, 68 of them were founded by IIT alumni. IITians have gone on to lead multinationals like Google CEO Sundar Pichai and Arvind Krishna at IBM. These colleges are an engineering gold mine, so much so that other countries want to replicate them. The government is planning to set up IITs in 7 other countries, starting with Tanzania. Now, Indian engineers have gone and found their place in the sun. But today isn't just about applauding them. It's also about understanding their hurdles, their challenges. Engineering is considered a lucrative field, so obviously the competition is fierce all the way. It's difficult to get into an engineering program and almost impossible to crack an elite college. Acceptance rates at the IITs fall well under 5%, meaning if 100 students apply, less than 5 make it. And even for those who do, life can be tough. The process of becoming an engineer is daunting, it's ruthless. A lot of times students make it to the programs but do not pass. And now fewer students are passing courses. Only 66% of undergrad students passed this year. It's down from 85% last year. And what's next for those who graduate? They face weak job prospects. Between 2014 and 2018, 60% of IIT Bombay graduates took up non-core jobs, meaning they could not find jobs in their own field of study. And this is not just about one college. According to data from the government, almost half of India's engineering undergraduates are unemployable. Almost half. The World Economic Forum says the situation is much worse. According to them, only 1 in 5 Indian engineering graduates are employable. 1 in 5. These are terrible odds. And the result is this. Engineering is falling out of favor among students. Between the late 2000s and the early 2010s, India saw an engineering boom. 1 in 4 students graduating in science was from India. So about 25% of the world's science graduates were in India during that period. In 2021, about 3.9 million Indians were studying to become engineers. This is a big number. It's more than the population of some countries, 3.9 million, but for India, it's a drop. And this has been the trend in the past decade. In 2015, more than 17% undergrad students were studying engineering. By 2021, the share had dropped to 12%. Look at these numbers. Year on year, the number of student enrollments in engineering are dropping. The number of colleges offering engineering courses have also come down. So it is clear that India's love affair with engineering faces some turbulence. But that is not to say that a breakup lies ahead. Students want to persevere. They want to become nation builders. 1.5 million engineers every year is no small feat, but their journey should not be so hard. They face poor odds of selection, disappointing employability, and challenges from disruptive technology, also a lot of pressure, yet they keep going. To them, engineering still shines as a beacon of hope. But like most relationships, there must be give and take. Let's just say engineering needs its mojo back. And before I tell you our last story for today, I want you to see this video.
Que tengo a mi espalda, el hombre intentó entrar armado. Un segundo, que estamos en directo. Disculpad, el hombre intentó entrar. Por mucho que quieras intentar preguntarnos de qué canal somos, de verdad me tienes que tocar el culo. Estoy haciendo un directo y estoy trabajando.
You saw what happened there? That was a Spanish journalist, Isa Balado. She was reporting on a story. She was live on air. That's when a man comes from behind and touches her inappropriately. And this moment is caught on live television. But when she confronts the man, he denies with a straight face. He shows no remorse, none whatsoever. The man has since been arrested, but this incident has sparked massive outrage both in Spain and across the world. How is any place safe for women if they're not even safe on live television? Our next report tells you more.
In the world of live TV, moments are usually scripted. But even then, unpredictable things happen. They sometimes catch us by surprise, or in this case, shock. In Spain, reporter Isa Balado was standing in front of a camera, poised to deliver the latest news. Little did she know that an unwelcome guest was lurking. As she speaks, a man walks behind her and suddenly grabs her inappropriately. Isa is caught by surprise, but she does not stop reporting. But the anchor is shocked. He's enraged by the brazenness of the man. So he asks Isa to question the man. When she finally confronts him, the man is unfazed. He even denies it all happened, even if it just played out on live TV for thousands. The incident isn't a new one. It has happened to women a million times. In their homes, in offices, on streets, and now even on live TV. But this one has now sparked massive outrage in Spain. We've all heard about the Metoo movement. But in Spain right now, it is se acabó. that Spanish for "it's over." First, there was the unsolicited kiss by Luis Rubiales. He was the president of the Spanish Football Federation. He was celebrating the World Cup win of the women's team. That is when he kissed player Jennifer Hermoso without her consent. Hermoso protested, the players protested, and many in Spain came to the streets. That is when Luis Rubiales resigned. Now he's in the courts in a sexual assault probe.
We can stand up and say what we have said from the start. It was a kiss without consent. Everyone saw the images, the whole country saw it. And we can say that precisely because of that, thanks to social change too, and also because of the legal changes, we can show that Mr. Rubiales lacked consent.
But if the Rubiales incident wasn't a jolt to Spanish football, this one surely was. 4 football players are now under investigation. 3 of them have been arrested. They were playing for Real Madrid's reserve team. Why? Because of filming a video of sexual nature of a minor and circulating it. Rubiales' antics are deplorable, and so were the antics of all these men. It all comes down to one simple thing: the lack of consent. But while these incidents are now making noise, Spanish society has long been silent. It is finally speaking out. This has been a slow and long-drawn change, but a welcome one. And policies and governments have had to play a role in it. Since 2017, the Metoo movement has made significant strides, both in Spain and in the world. But this incident reminds us that there is still work to be done, by supporting survivors, by raising awareness, and by actively challenging harassment. Who knows, maybe one day, live television will be free of predators with wandering hands, and women can truly feel safe on TV and off it. And that is all we can hope for.
And now it's time for Vantage Charts images that tell the story. Looks like Kim Jong-un lived his Top Gun dreams in Russia. The North Korean leader was seen sitting in the cockpit of a fighter jet. In the United States, a new video shows airport staff stealing from bags. So next time, remember to get some padlocks for your luggage. And the Northern Lights put on a dazzling show over the Scottish Islands, lighting up the night sky. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1978, Muhammad Ali won the world heavyweight boxing title for the 3rd time, becoming the first boxer ever to do so. Just a year after that, Ali announced that he was retiring, but finally left the sport in 1981. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.